Welcome to chapter 28 of the book of Isaiah, a wonderful chapter of the future that this man Isaiah sees, a redemption for all mankind. And as we go through, we'll point all these out and we'll see what redemption is all about to a people that were 700 or so years before Christ, before they were taken away by Nebuchadnezzar. They were ruled by this monarchy that Isaiah was living through, and the things that he saw, it's just amazing. So let's just go into it, and it starts away to the Stephano of insolence. The Stephano, we have the word Stephan, means crown, oive. The hirelings of Ephraim. A hireling generally was talking about a nation hiring other nations to protect them or to do their bidding. It's not talking about, I don't believe, individual hirelings working sheep and the flocks and so forth, or people working on buildings building, but it's the countries that were hired mainly by Israel, because we see right here it says Ephraim. And Ephraim was the embodiment of the land of Israel, where Samaria was located, and the city of Samaria on a hill, high up, 300 feet high. The first king of Israel, the 10 nations, when they split with Judah, was Rehoboam. He became king, and Rehoboam was from Ephraim, so this may be why they consider Ephraim the embodiment of Israel. The hirelings are mentioned in Jeremiah 46:21, where they hired Egypt, but also Assyria was hired, and Syria. And it mentions, and it says the flower. Anthology, anthos, is a derivative, the one having fallen of the glory upon the top of the thick branched mountain. I put branch, but I don't know what else thickness would be. The one being intoxicated without wine, and we know at this time that Israel was being attacked, and the things that were going on with these people towards the end, Isaiah sees, and I believe he's referring to this country. It says, "Behold, strong and hard is the rage of the Lord," which it is against the people of Israel and the northern kingdom of Israel at this time. Scleros, we have sclero for I'm trying to think of not cardiosclerosis, but muscular sclerosis, a hardness of the muscle. Behold, strong and hard is the rage of the Lord, as hail being carried down, not having protection. And I saw a couple of days ago of this YouTube video of all these people at someplace in Russia, where these hail balls were the size of baseballs coming down. These people are on the beach with no clothes on except their shorts, swimming trunks, and it was it lasted for it seemed like it lasted for 10 minutes. And it says, with force being carried down as a multitude of much water dragging a place along. In the land he shall cause rest to the hands. So now what he's mentioning here, to me, I think it's rest to the hands means there's not going to be any work. So basically the economy is coming to a halt. People are going to be taken away. And it says, and by the feet the crown of insolence shall be trampled, and that possibly the king of Israel, and the hirelings of Ephraim. Could be Egypt, by Assyrians. I'm not sure what he's referring to here, but those are possibilities. And the flower shall be the one having fallen off of the hope of the glory upon the tip of the high mountain as a forerunner of a fig. The high mountain could be referring to Samaria, which is up 300 feet high, which was the capital of the northern kingdom. The one beholding it, before taking it into his hand, will want to swallow it. So I'm not exactly sure what he's referring to here. As part of me, because it goes into prophecies that lead to me to see Christ in a lot of these, this would be a forerunner of a fig. The flower shall be upon the tip of the high mountain, the one having fallen off of the hope of the glory. Basically, the destruction of Israel in the future and Jesus Christ and Christianity of the nations coming as a forerunner of a fig. The one beholding it, before taking it into his hand, will want to swallow it down. Once they see what Christ has to offer, then people will want it. That's a possibility. People could come up with all types of possibilities in their going through this and bringing things out. In that day, the Lord of hosts will be the crown of hope, the one being plated of glory to the one being left behind of my people. Now, I saw right away, whoa, plated, okay, Jesus, because it says in Matthew 27:29, and having plaited a crown from out of thorns, they placed it upon his head, and a reed in his right hand, and kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews. And then in Mark 15:17, and they clothed him in purple, and having plaited a thorny crown, they put it on him. And then John 19:2 and 3, and the soldiers, having plaited a crown from out of thorns, placed it upon his head, and a cloak of purple they put around him, and said, Hail, the King of the Jews. And they gave him slaps. So in that day, the Lord of hosts will be the crown of hope. Well, he is. Hope for mankind. The one being plated, the crown being plated, of glory to the one being left behind of my people. So to me, the Jews are the ones that are the main beneficiaries of Christ. And it's not the nations, but we became the beneficiaries of the Christ. But the Jew is what Christ was originally designed to be for, the glory, and to the one being left behind of my people, whoever they are today even. And they shall be left behind in spirit of equity for judgment, and for the strength resisting doing away with. Basically, I see that as a hope in Jesus. They shall be left behind in spirit of equity for judgment. They're not going to get away. There is, instead of as a spirit of equity for judgment, the right thing is going to be the judgment, and for the strength restraining doing away with. God is not going to completely wipe them out. Verse 7, for these are wandering in wine, wandering because of liquor. Who? The priest and the prophet are startled because of the liquor. They are swallowed down because of the wine. They are shaken from the intoxication of the liquor. They wandered. This is a visible display. So the clergy fallen, basically. I think intoxication is just what he's using here as a condition of being out of control. It says, a curse shall devour this plan, for this plan is because of the desire for wealth. So apparently the clergy at the time that Isaiah is writing this, he sees, or maybe he's looking in the future, of this clergy desiring wealth. Now, of course, this is not limited to the clergy of the Jews. The rabbis are so. It's also to the of many Christians, the televangelists, and quite a few people do it because of wealth, maybe more so with the church than with the Jews. To whom did we announce evils, and to whom did we announce a message? The ones being weaned from milk and the ones being drawn away from the breast. So he's announcing this. Who do we announce the evils to? Well, he's announcing it basically here to whoever's reading this, but it's a message. The ones being weaned from milk and the ones being drawn away from the breast, people that are nourishing from God, I suppose it's talking about here, but they're going away from God and leaving the God of Israel. Affliction upon affliction, favorably receive hope upon hope, still a little and still a little. Basically, they continue to do the same thing. Affliction upon affliction, favorably receive hope upon hope, still a little, because of disparagement of the lips. For they shall speak by another tongue to this people. It could be the Christians, because it mentions in another place people that were not his people. So, another tongue speaking to this people, saying to it, this is the rest to the one hungering, and this is destruction. And they wanted not to hear. So that basically, it was almost like what I'm doing here. It's telling people about what Isaiah is saying to the Jews, and they don't want to hear it. If a Christian says anything, teaches the Bible especially. With me, I teach out of the Greek Old Testament rather than the Hebrew, because the Greek New Testament was written by the Jews. All the writers of the New Testament, and they quoted the Old. They didn't quote the Hebrew, they quoted the Greek. So that's why I'm going through the Greek Old Testament, because you can tie it into a lot of the things into the New. Well, if the Jews heard somebody teaching the Old Testament out of Greek, they would have a heart attack over it, because their Hebrew is the only thing, even though their Mishnah says that the scriptures are allowed to be only translated into Greek. But they don't care about what the Mishnah says when it's something that they don't want to hear. So this is the way it is. And I get letters from people that say, well, why are you going through the Bible in the Greek and not the Hebrew? Which is a good question, because it was originally written in Hebrew, but then like I mentioned to them, well, I said, well, ask why all the writers of the New Testament quoted from the Greek Old Testament and not the Hebrew. When you have that answer, then you'll know. And it continues then at 13, and the oracle of God will be to them affliction upon affliction, hope upon hope, still a little. It's going to continue going, and they're just going to continue doing the same, that they should go and should fall to the rear, and shall be exposed to danger, and shall be broken, and shall be captured. Yep. So if you want to continue in this still a little, oh well, let it be, whatever's happening, well, when it really gets bad, then you may change your mind, it may be too late. On account of this, acousate logon kyriou. Here, acoustics, the word of the Lord. Andros, an android, comes from this word man. O men being afflicted, and rulers of this people in Jerusalem. So he's writing to the people in Jerusalem. Listen to this. One's the word of the Lord. Wow. For you said, we made a covenant with Hades and treaties with death. If a gale being brought should go by, in no way should it come to us. We made the lie our hope, and by the lie we shall be sheltered. So something they were doing, the lie at the time, that they didn't believe. In the covenant with Hades, it reminds me of what the Jews did during the Holocaust, and they set up these councils called the Judenrat, and the Judenrat were Jews that were chosen, and they made a covenant basically with Hades, with the Nazis. And in Wikipedia, you can look up Judenrat, Judenrat, and read all about it. It's very interesting. In one part of it, I copied out because to me it shows this treatise with Hades. It's quotes, it says, Hannah Arendt stated in her 1963 book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, that without the assistance of the Judenrat, the registration of the Jews, their concentration in ghettos, and later, their active assistance in the Jews' deportation to extermination camps, fewer Jews would have perished because the Germans would have encountered considerable difficulties in drawing up lists of Jews. In occupied Europe, the Nazis entrusted Jewish officials with the task of making such lists of Jews, along with information about the property they owned. The Judenrat also directed the Jewish police to assist the Germans in catching Jews and loading them onto transport trains leaving for Nazi concentration camps. So this is what happened in the Holocaust, what they have done in past history in 2,000 years after leaving Israel and Jerusalem. I don't know. There's maybe other things that they did that were made covenants with Hades. Quite a condemnation here that in 28:15 that Isaiah is bringing out to the Jews. Now, what is the reason this is all bringing out, and I'm bringing out the part with the Judenrat and all that? Well, the answer to me is in the future here, and we're going to get into it in the next couple of verses, is Jesus Christ, to become a Christian. And once you become a Christian, then your covenant is again with heaven instead of Hades and ignoring what God has planned for you. And my purpose isn't to put the Jews down. It isn't to hope that bad things happen to them. I hope good things happen to everyone. I don't want bad things to happen to anybody. But the good things that I see that I would offer, Jesus is Jesus Christ. So hopefully that would be something that you would see. I'm not trying to bring these up except for what Isaiah, and show what Isaiah is trying to say, and that how in history and so forth these things have happened to the Jews. And now it continues in 16, this interesting portion. On account of this, thus says the Lord. So again, Isaiah is bringing out, the Lord is saying this. And what is he saying? Behold, God's saying, I shall put for the foundations of Zion a very costly chosen cornering stone of value for her foundations, and the one believing upon it, him, in no way should be disgraced. Now, this quotation was used three times in the New Testament. In Romans 9:33, Paul says, But Israel, pursuing a law of righteousness, attained not unto the law of righteousness. Why? Because it was not from out of belief, but as from out of works of law. For they stumbled against the stone of stumbling, as it has been written, and he quotes this verse here. And then in Romans 10:11, he continues and he says, For the Scripture says, Everyone believing upon him shall not be disgraced. And that's this last part of it. So believing on him and Jesus. So here, Isaiah is showing it's a person. It's not a stone. It's a figure. And then in 1 Peter 2:6, Peter says, For it is contained in the Scripture, Behold, I place in Zion a chosen, valued, cornering stone, and the one believing upon him in no way will be disgraced. To you, then, a stone of value, to the ones believing. But to the ones disbelieving, a stone which the one building rejected. This one became for head of the corner. So rejected by the Jews, and this is Christ. 17, and I shall place judgment for hope, and my charity by weight. So he's not going to continue with the Jews as he, in this place that happens, when this happens, Isaiah is showing, not necessarily at the time he's writing this, but it's going to happen, a judgment for hope. So you have hope it's nice to hope, but then all of a sudden when you're put into judgment, if you're doing bad, then, It's not a good place to be. And my charity by weights. He's not going to give it out freely to everybody. It's going to be given out. It's going to be limited by God. And the ones relying vainly in a lie, that in no way should a gale go by you. And I see that as the Holocaust, rejecting of Christ. And so they have to look and say, well, why do all these bad things happening to us? You would think that they would come to a conclusion. Maybe they're doing something wrong, or they're believing the wrong thing, but it doesn't seem like it takes hold in their thought process. They just believe vainly in a lie, relying upon the lie still today, that in no way the gale should go by you. The Holocaust happens. Now they're back into Israel again. It's going to be attacked and Jerusalem destroyed. And the beast will come around, and then it will be destroyed. And your covenant of death should not be removed. I have a covenant of death. And your hope towards Hades in no way should adhere. So they have made your hope in Hades and a covenant of death. So this is quite a condemnation for the Jews of the future. If the blast being brought should come, you will be for trampling by it. Whenever it should go by, it shall take you. Morning by morning it shall go by you, and in the night it will be an evil hope. Learn to hear. Well, there you are. How long is this condition going to last? I suppose it'll last until Christ returns, when he shows his hands, the imprints of the nails in his hands, and they start crying. It says, I forgot what one of the prophets, but they'll be crying over him, and tribe by tribe. And that apparently is going to be when Christ returns, after this period that the beast comes and the destruction of the world. In verse 20, O ones having been restricted, we are not able to do combat, but ourselves we weakened for you to gather. Some type of a weakening of the system of the Jews, I suppose, as if a mountain of impious ones, the Lord should rise up, and it shall be in the ravine of Gibeon. With rage he shall execute his works, a work of bitterness. But his rage he shall treat strangely, and his rottenness in strangeness. Well, to me, and a lot of people could see this, the whole thing is talking about, this says the ravine of Gibeon. Well, Gibeon, Gabaon. Now, there's two places it could Gabaon. Normally it's Gibeon. I think in the Hebrew they come up with the Gibeon part of it, but it's also, there's a Gibeah. Gibeon is only 5 miles north of Jerusalem. It's called El Jid, I believe, now by Givon. And it's only 5 miles. And you go out, it was the gate of Damascus, and then you go up and to Gibeon. And Gibeah was only 2 miles north of Jerusalem, and I think you would go out the same gate. To me, there's a good chance to this would be referring to the crucifixion of Christ and where he was buried and so forth outside of Jerusalem. Now, other people they call he was crucified on Golgotha. It could have been in this area. It says, as if a mountain of impious ones, the Lord shall rise up, and it shall be in the ravine of Gibeon, where this happened. With rage he shall execute his works, a work of bitterness. But his rage he shall treat strangely, in his rottenness and strangeness. Well, that's right, it was strange. He rose from the dead in 3 days, and his love for the people was showered to anybody that would accept this resurrection of Christ. And they, instead of a bitterness, it was treated strange. That's how I see it, and so be it. In verse 22, and you, may you not be glad, nor the bonds strengthen in you. For I heard the things being completed and being rendered concise by the Lord of hosts, which he will do upon all the earth. So now he is bringing this, what the God is doing. It's going to, after this, to me, the resurrection, the crucifixion, then it's going to come to an end, which he will do upon all the earth. He's going to act with all the people, the nations. Give ear and hearken to my voice. Take heed and hear my words. Now, is this God or is this Isaiah? Well, I heard the things I heard of the Lord of hosts, which he will do. Give ear and hearken to my voice. I would say it was God. Take heed and hear my words. And then, shall not the one plowing be about to plow the entire day? Or the one sowing, will he not prepare beforehand to work the ground? Well, this is all, to me, has to do with the destruction and then the rebuilding of that period of time he's talking about. Is it not whenever he should level the face of it, then sow the small pepperwort, or come in and again sow wheat and barley and spelt in your boundaries? See, first it was he levels it, and then he does this. And you shall be corrected in the equity of your God, and shall be glad. So this is all happening, punishment on the earth. For not with hardness is the pepperwort cleansed, nor shall the wheel of the wagon lead about upon the cummin, but is shaken off. The pepperwort is shaken off by a rod, but the cummin shall be eaten with bread. It's all going to be rebuilt, reused for something good, even though it was torn down at the beginning. For I am not provoked to anger against you into the eon, nor shall the voice of my bitterness trample you. And so the Lord shows that it is not for the eon that he's provoked to anger even against Israel and us, the Christians and the sinners of the world that have rejected Christ. He wants everybody to come to the knowledge of the truth. And these miracles came forth by the Lord of hosts. What miracles is he talking about? It doesn't talk about any miracles here at all. Well, Acts 2:22, it says, Men, Israelites, hear these words. Jesus the Nazarene, a man from God, exhibited unto you powers and miracles and signs which God did through him in your midst, even as even you yourselves know. So the Lord, and these miracles came forth by the Lord of hosts. Take counsel, exalt, vain comfort. We are the comfort, well, exalt, vain comfort. I'm not exactly sure what he's, useless comfort, exalt, useless comfort, but that doesn't kind of go along with what he's talking about here. It's a hard one, hard place. Take counsel. Well, maybe he's talking about a vain comfort. If you are comforting in something that is vain, it's not really going to happen, the lie, then not very good. Chapter 29, now Isaiah goes in to the city of Ariel, and we'll find out what this city is, what it really is. It's a figure, and go through this 29th chapter of the book of Isaiah. Hope you'll join us in chapter 29, and God bless.